Okay, go ahead.
So my only close to horror story would be D Street. But the great thing about these horror stories is they don't actually end badly. It's just the process is very
Some of them
rigorous.
badly. Yeah.
At least for you and me, they both ended well. But D Street was kind of a mess. At least getting my sellers into their new house was a definite mess of like just constantly going back to them. Their sellers asking for pre-occupancy because my seller ended up in a situation where he had to close on his property to get into the new one, and it closed, but yet our closing for the house they were getting into got pushed back twice. After we got a clear to close from the lender twice, which means, hey, man, that's not clear to close.
Right.
That's, I don't know what you're telling us. Like,
Right.
he sent it to us in writing, clear to close, 2 separate times, and we weren't actually clear to close.
Right.
So my seller/buyer ends up out of his house, camping in the front yard of his soon-to-be house with a trailer, and it's in the middle of December, so he's got Christmas tree and Christmas gifts on the trailer getting rained on.
Wow.
And we're probably in that predicament for about 5 days before we actually close on the other place. So he's going to a friend's house up the road to stay in the shower, and he's got all of his stuff in the yard, his animals in the yard. Thankfully, it's fenced in.
That's right. He brought his animals with him.
Yeah, he brought all of his farm animals,
Oh
his
my
pigs,
God.
his dogs, everything to a house that's not technically his yet. And because he had no choice, because
Right.
I had to also, like, I was on both ends of his selling his house. I represented the buyers, so I had to be stern with him at some point and say, hey man, like, my buyers that are buying your place have done nothing wrong. Like, everything's gone well for them, and I've made sure this deal goes as smooth as possible. So to be fair, and he's in agreement. I said, to be fair, they have earned the right to be in their house. It is their house technically, and you're still staying there until you leave to the new place.
Right.
So, I mean, they were gracious. My buyers were gracious enough to let him stay for 2 to 3 days, but they moved from out of state, so they're staying at an extended stay hotel.
All right.
2 days after they've closed on their new house, and they're not in it yet.
Right.
So, like, tensions could have went crazy at that point, and it could have ended very poorly on that end too. But luckily, as you said, cooler heads prevail. I kept the calm and the camaraderie between those two parties without them even ever actually meeting. I brokered that whole, was the middleman for both of them through that whole thing, and that ended well. But I mean, talking about impending lawsuits, like, my guy's camping out in the lawn that's not his, eventually has to, like, see if he can get into a shed that's not his to take cover from the rain to sleep there. So it was a huge deal. I mean, that's not even the half of it. We had septic issues. We had issues that wouldn't be paid for. We had, I mean, especially because it was right after a hurricane, and they said the septic water was coming up into the yard. So, and that really didn't it got taken care of from my buyer, but it was definitely a headache. But to that point, as we talked about earlier, I'm on the phone with my clients every day. I talk to him for almost an hour a day every day just to ease the tension and help him realize, like, hey man, I know this is rough right now, but there will be an end to this. Just put our heads down and keep charging forward. It's gonna end, and it's gonna get better. I promise you that.
Yeah. As a realtor, you're almost your client's therapist.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
More like a therapist. We should all get our therapy licenses.
Yeah. You are a counselor. You're a financial advisor. You're an investment broker. You're everything as a real estate agent.
Yep. An Uber driver.
Yeah. You wear very many hats.
Very many, yes. There's another story that I wanted to tell. I'm trying to think of it. I'm not going to tell the
Bobby?
I'm not going to tell the Bobby story.
No.
It's not done.
That's the worst part.
What was the other story? I was thinking about one. Told the Josephina story. I've already told the Munda story. The Bobby story. The Cypress story.
Was it you talking about the foreclosure story? The Lake
I
Nono one?
I could talk about that one. It's kind of a bad ending, though.
It is a bad ending,
really
but it's
happened.
going out to agents. So
Nothing really happened. What about some bigger concepts? What else we got?
in what regard? What do you mean?
I'm asking you.
Bigger concept? Yeah, but I'm asking, like, in what regard? Bigger concepts for real estate, for us, for
real estate-ish? Real estater?
You're a big proprietor of AI, so you tell me.
Oh, God, AI is so scary. AI is frightening. I don't know if they do that on purpose, but if you go on, like, TikTok or
Just watch
Instagram
Black Mirror.
Reels,
You'll see
Black
everything
Mirror.
you need to see.
Dude, if you go on there, all you see is like videos about Elon Musk talking about how it's like totally like crazy and the end of the world. Everybody's talking about how the future looks and how AI will eventually take over, and like yeah.
Well, that's
like,
the internet in the news, though. Like, that's all you're gonna see.
But is it though? Because AI does some. AI is going to edit this video for us.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm aware.
We'll get rid of video editors
And
now.
it hears us talking about it.
Yeah, it hears us talking about it. I'm going to get some ads on my phone after this.
It's going to be self-aware just through videos like this, because
Right.
AI, that's me.
Right, I'm AI. Yeah, no, this is, we're on the brink. We're definitely, like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know everything about AI, because I don't. And I don't think
But it
anybody
knows
really,
everything about you, Ian.
I don't think anybody really knows everything about AI.
But it knows everything about you.
It might one
That's
day.
the scary
It
thing.
will one day. But the crazy thing is like well, for me, what keeps me up at night is I don't want to be left behind. I want to integrate AI into my business every way I can, right? I already use ChatGPT for property descriptions. I use Opus for editing these large podcasts. I messed around with some Discord stuff, Midjourney for images. I've used the mic service before. I've used the Lenza for editing your photos of yourself and making yourself look cool and doing a little confidence boost for you. But there's so much more to it. And like the companies like Google and all those big companies, they're doing some really crazy things. And I can guarantee you they haven't told the public everything.
Oh,
So I bet there's so much out there that we don't even know about yet. But I actually had a conversation. What I've realized is that nobody knows anything about.
You're not going to know anything because the internet, or the AI, is infiltrating the internet. Have
Ah,
you ever
Jesus.
seen Avengers Age of Ultron? It's Ultron, dude.
Yeah.
It's going to get into the internet and you're never going to see anything about it.
Yeah, we need to shut it down. I was having that thought process last night. I was watching a video on TikTok, and I'm like, man, if there was a button somewhere where you could just mass delete everything and get rid of the technology, I would press it right away. I press that button. I'd rather not have it than be the only one to have it, or to be like, I just would rather it not exist. It's fucking scary, dude.
Yeah.
It is. It really is. Like, to think about what it could be and what it could do and what it means for our future. Like, we might not be a biological species in 100 years, 200 years.
Yeah.
We might be symbiotic.
It's going to assimilate us.
Yeah, and that's a future that frightens me.
Well, you won't really be around for it. Although, then again, medical advancements in technology, you could live a long time. Here's a deep conversation for you. Would you want to be immortal?
I would want to be immortal until I wouldn't want to be immortal anymore.
But that's not really an option.
I want to have a choice. I want to be immortal long enough to where I'm like, I'm kind of sick of this shit, and then just
Well, that's not
Turn it off.
immortality, right? Like,
turn it off.
right. I don't want to be immortal.
Maybe not that I want to be immortal. Do I want to? It's hard to say I don't want to be immortal, right? Because like everything,
The
in
amount
our,
of things you can do, right? And
what's the only thing guaranteed in life?
death, yeah.
Death
you
and
want
taxes,
to
right?
eliminate that guarantee, yeah.
Right. So the biggest thing that humanity's afraid of, our whole biological evolution is based off of. I mean, whether or not you're a Christian, but is based off of surviving and reproducing.
Yeah.
Right. That's like our whole
Well, that's
point of life.
That's life in general.
Biologically.
I would say that's just life in general.
to survive.
Yeah.
Right. And to reproduce.
Survive and thrive. Yeah. That's,
so-
that's a life force. That's
Immortality gets rid of both of those, doesn't it?
yeah.
You no longer need to reproduce because you live forever. Everybody lives forever, and you're no longer afraid of dying because you live forever.
So you're no longer to that point. Are you saying you're no longer human at that point, right?
I mean, you're still human, I think. You
No, I don't
still have
know,
a brain
but-
and a heart and compassion and love, and you still feel things, but
I know, but is that everything to a human? I mean, you and I both are of the sound mind that there is spirit and there is other things involved.
Yeah.
So, I would not want to be immortal because you are right. Like, death is a part of life. I think if you remove death, then you are essentially, I don't want to say cheating life, but then it's not life, right?
yeah, because you only know one thing from its opposite,
Yeah.
right? Like, you only know life because of death. You only know death because of life.
And this is how you know I'm talking. Is now we've gone way too deep with this.
You only know you're hungry because you've been full.
Yeah.
Right. You only know what it feels like to drown because you've breathed air. I mean, I could go on forever about these, but
Yeah, the opposite.
it's yeah, what would life be like if you weren't afraid of dying?
Well, it would be.
If there was no element
It
of
would be
death,
fun and depressing, right?
would it?
I think it would just be depressing. Maybe.
I had this thought process last night too. I was thinking about this. I'm like, what if I could get rid of, like, because we were talking, I was watching the video, went down the rabbit
Because
hole
if you have
of
no
AI.
if you have no fear of dying, then there's no risk involved. There's no courage involved because you can't be hurt.
Right. Well, so I went down the rabbit hole of AI, and I was like, man, if we're gonna be robots, like, why do we need to have feelings? I'm like, if I was a robot, would I need feelings? Like, would I need to be happy or sad? And I'm like, what if I just got rid of being sad and I was just happy all the time? Would that be a good thing? How would that feel? What would that be like? Just happy all the time, or no emotions. That would be terrible, right?
That's the definition of a psychopath, sir.
But happy though all the time wouldn't be so bad. I don't think. I don't know.
Yeah, but then you get into the deep waters of, do you have appreciation? If you're never sad, how can you appreciate being happy?
Let's find
You're
that
not
red
peaks and
button.
valleys.
Let's find that red button somewhere and just end AI. AI, if you're watching this, I'm talking about you.
Yeah.
We're gonna end up
And
dead.
we always have this conversation in regards to ChatGPT. And Devin and I had this conversation at our open house about ChatGPT. My issue with ChatGPT is simply that Devin literally typed into ChatGPT an argument. He's like, how can I get my very intellectual friend to realize that ChatGPT is a good thing? And in doing that, he proved my point. Because if he can't critically think on his own to come up and formulate an argument on how he can defend ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has to do it for him, then he's proving my point by eliminating critical thinking.
So I have a counter argument to that.
Okay, I'm all ears.
I heard a story about there was a king once upon a time, and somebody went to the
And
king.
You did say this to me, and I like this story.
Somebody went to the king, and they said, "Hey, we've invented this new thing. It's called pen and paper." And the king said, "No, get rid of that. I'm scared of that. I don't want that, because then people won't have to rely on their memories anymore." Did pen and paper make us smarter, or did it make us dumber?
Well, pen and paper absolutely made us smarter
It was
and
able
wiser.
to. We're able to transfer knowledge easier now.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, like, if you read about like Google and what they're trying to do, they're trying to create AGI, which is like a godlike super intelligence. And if you had access,
terrifying.
If it is terrifying. If you had access to God, right? Not obviously. Listen, I'm not saying it's God. I'm a Christian. But if you had access to a super intelligence that knows almost everything, it's 10 times smarter than you, 100 times smarter than you, how could you use it?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, the internet's the same way, right? Some people use it for bad. Some people use it for educational and good. And I think that comes down to, in Devin's argument with this, that comes down to the human component. It's like, are you going to use this for good, or are you going to use this for bad, or for not really doing anything or pushing anything forward?
I think it's even scarier than that. I think it's scarier than good and bad. If it was just good and bad, I'd be okay with it. Because I always feel like good outweighs the bad in the world. Or at least I try to outweigh the bad with the good. I think it's going to be even scarier than that. It's going to be the unknown. It's not going to be good or bad. It's just going to go in directions and ways that we have no idea. We might not even, it's so unfathomable.
Yeah.
You can't even fathom what AI is. It's hard, right? It's a human brain on crack, right? It's a super intelligence. What can it do? What will it do? Where's it going to take us? It's going to have a mind of its own. Hopefully not, but I mean that's what everybody's saying, right?
Right.
What it was? What's the Terminator thing? Skynet. Was Skynet created? Did they create Skynet?
Yes, it created Skynet.
Yeah, so it's scary. But I do want to talk practically about AI real quick. So if you're a real estate agent out there, let's restart the video real quick.